Hey there. So I go out and I talk a lot about gene technologies and the types of miracle cures that I believe are going to come out of this industry. And one of the things that I hear back a lot, which doesn't surprise me quite frankly, is that people are worried about, will these cures, will these innovations, will these new therapies really get out to the public? Now, we live in this age where everybody's got a conspiracy theory and everybody believes that, some major corporation or some big interest is behind the scenes pulling the strings and somehow it's not going to act in your interest. But what I wanted to do for a few minutes here is to let you know my feelings about how the pharma industry is going to embrace and actually accelerate the type of work that we're doing at American Gene Technologies. It boils down basically to this. Pharma companies are going to make a lot of money off of providing new cures to patients. You think, well, wait a minute, they're already making $1 trillion in sales, and that's all the money that there is available for healthcare in the United States. And in that way, you'd actually be wrong. And here's why. Because the $1 trillion pharmaceutical market is only limited by the fact that that is all the money that society can afford to pay for that amount of utility. In other words, the amount of things that are being done by pharmaceuticals out there today, whether it's the aspirin you take or some sort or Humira that you take for inflammation or something that you're being sold for late stage cancer. The bottom line is that it's providing certain amount of extension of life, improvement in let's say, quality of life. And, when you take all the money that's available for healthcare, it ends up being divided between these therapeutics, this $1 trillion bubble right now of different drugs that you could take that might alleviate the symptoms. And what else? Going to the doctor with symptoms that cannot be taken care of, with comorbidities that are associated with chronic diseases that are treatable with these drugs, that may treat some of the symptoms of these drugs, but don't really cure the disease. That's what's amazing about gene technologies. I think you're already seeing that certain things go from incurable to curable with gene technologies. We're not talking about moving the needle just a little bit. We're actually starting to provide solutions like CAR-T that are wiping out certain terminal cancers now. There's 2 CAR-Ts that have been approved by the FDA in just the last 3 months. And both of them actually have somewhere on the order of an 80% cure rate for a blood cancer that was formerly terminal. Think about that. A formerly terminal disease. That is high utility. That is the power of gene technologies. Now, they're not cheap things to buy, but at least you're getting years of life to help you justify the cost. This is really the opposite of the current drug bubble. When I look at the current drug bubble, there's a lot of drugs in there that don't really do all that much. There's probably a monoclonal antibody that is available for a terminal cancer that you or a family member or somebody that you know has dealt with before or is dealing with. And in fact, a lot of these monoclonal antibodies are about $100,000 for the treatment, and you sit in an infusion for 1 to as long as 14 days worth of infusion in order to get these monoclonal antibodies so that they can act on your body and give you some possibility of an extension of life. And what would you think that you got for $100,000? Well, let me tell you that a lot of those monoclonal antibodies will give you something on the order of an average of 6 weeks extra survival. 6 weeks for $100,000. So it isn't an investment in your future. It isn't going to put you back on the street or restore your quality of life or allow you to live another year or 2 or 3, like some of the CAR-T treatments that are coming out right now. No, it's just going to be another expense for the insurance company of you passing away. And so those low utility drugs, that's why we're starting to have trouble paying for those sort of things for everybody. It's hard to justify that when you talk about all the people that might need those treatments, and that's what's sort of squeezing that market right now. But if we replace those drugs with things that knock it back 5 years, The bottom line is that the economics of them are very, very good. Instead of going into the hospital for a terminal cancer, which may cost $250,000 to $350,000 worth of hospitalization, surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, and then we add a $100,000 hopeful treatment on top of that, that may only extend your life by another 4 weeks, really not that significant, or 6 weeks, but remember what I said, a couple of weeks in an infusion chair, so really you're only getting 4 weeks out walking around. Well, now the cost of that, of you basically dying, and pretty much on the same schedule that you would have died anyway with just the radiation and chemotherapy, the cost has gone up by $100,000, and the total could be up nearly $500,000 of you just passing away. If we kick that down the road for 5 years with a new CAR T treatment or another type of cancer therapy like the one that AGT is developing, then we might be looking at a $100,000 treatment or even a $200,000 treatment in terms of the drug, but maybe just $50,000 worth of hospital basically services in order to deliver that treatment. And so instead of $500,000 cost of you dying, $250,000 to get you back out and working again, maybe for years, or back out and enjoying retirement. Whatever it is, that has some value. Now the utility is going up. But it's more than that in terms of how we could increase this drug bubble, because we'd be giving more value and people could afford to pay more for it. It's the fact that there are 7,000 untreatable, incurable, monogenic diseases out there. In other words, inherited disorders that are currently untreatable and incurable, that range from inconvenient, like lactose intolerance, up to things that could be deadly, like beta thalassemia or hemophilia or sickle cell anemia, that can be painful, debilitating, and even terminal diseases. Even one that we're doing, phenylketonuria, it can be even a death sentence for some people. These things are currently untreatable, but they're in the wheelhouse of viral vectors. They are just part of AGT's platform of different types of treatments and diseases that our tool set is amenable for, that our viral vectors are designed to accommodate. And when you look out there in the industry, and when I've been to conferences recently like the Alliance of Regenerative Medicine, I saw data on a lot of these things like Gaucher's, Fabry's, hemophilia, beta thalassemia, all of these different monogenic diseases that looked really promising, that instead of you going to the hospital to deal with all of the symptoms of this disease, you might be able to take a viral vector treatment and be cured. We could reduce the cost of keeping you comfortable, these palliative treatments that result in doctor's visits or hospital visits or blood transfusions and a lot of expensive things that happen out there right now. And we could move that into what? The pharmaceutical market. In other words, pharmaceuticals could be the key to alleviating problems that cost a huge amount of money in hospitalizations and doctor's visits, and a huge lot of and the collateral benefit would be they'd be reducing pain and inconvenience for the patients as well. That's huge, because although the pharma industry is in fact $1 trillion a year, the healthcare industry is $10 trillion. And studies have shown that those 7,000 monogenic diseases are responsible for somewhere between 20% and 40% of the morbidity in the healthcare system. That's right, $2 to $4 billion. Trillion, sorry, did I say billion? I meant trillion. $10 trillion market. $2 to $4 trillion could be available to the pharmaceutical companies. That's a pretty tasty plum. And I'm telling you that, conspiracy theories aside, this is something that is very attractive at every level of the organization, right up to the board members, and in the interest of the shareholders, to bring this out as fast as possible. So I promise you that the pharmaceutical industry is eventually going to catch on to this wave. and they are going to profit greatly from it, and they are going to accelerate it, and they are going to be trying to bring it out as fast as possible to the patients because it means more money and more profits to them. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to give you my view of what's going on in this industry and why gene therapy is not just good for the patients. It's good for the market and it's good for the pharmaceutical companies, and that's something that's going to help bring it to the public. So don't be thinking about, the people that may want to get in the way of this. It's not just the pharmaceutical companies that are going to benefit from this, but also insurance companies as well. Those are other big players in this industry, and I'll get into that in a separate talk. So thank you for listening in. That's my vision of where all this stuff is going, and I hope it's interesting to you. Thank you.